The city was full of noise, lights, and moving shadows. But one street was different. It was dark, narrow, and almost forgotten. Rainwater dripped from broken pipes. The walls were covered with old posters, and the smell of garbage was heavy. In the air, Ethan, a simple human worker, walked home that night with tired steps. His boots splashed in the shallow puddles as he carried a small bag of groceries. He had worked long hours in the factory, and all he wanted was a warm meal and some rest. But life often surprises people in the most silent corners. From the corner of his eye, Ethan noticed something small sitting near the wall. At first, he thought it was a stray cat. But when the shape moved, he stopped. It was not a cat. It was a little figure. Thin and shaking, he stepped closer. His heart beat a little faster. The figure turned, and for the first time he saw her face. She was not human. Her skin had a faint silver glow under the dim streetlight. Her ears were long and delicate, and her big eyes reflected both fear and sadness. She was just a child. The tiny alien girl hugged her knees and tried to hide her face. She wore torn clothes, too big for her small body. Her hair was messy and tangled. Ethan could see she was trembling. She looked hungry, weak, and lost. For a moment, Ethan didn't know what to do. The world outside his planet had brought many alien species to Earth, but most people avoided them. Some treated them with hate, some with cold distance. He had never expected to meet one in such a place, and especially not a child. "Hey," Ethan said softly. His voice echoed in the narrow alley. The girl flinched and pressed herself against the wall like she was expecting pain. Ethan raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said gently. "I won't hurt you." The girl peeked at him through her tangled hair. Her lips were dry, and when she spoke, her voice was weak. "Stay away," she whispered. The words were broken, but he understood. Ethan slowly crouched down, keeping his distance. His bag of groceries shifted, and he remembered something inside. He pulled out a small bottle of milk. He had bought it for himself, but now it felt different. He placed the bottle on the ground and rolled it gently toward her. "Here," he said. "It's just milk." The girl stared at the bottle like it was a strange object from another world. She hesitated, her thin fingers reaching out slowly. Finally, she picked it up. Her small hand shook as she opened it. She sniffed carefully and then took a sip. Ethan watched quietly. He could see the way her eyes softened. The tension in her shoulders loosened as the first drops of milk touched her lips. She drank more, faster now, like she had not tasted food or drink for days. When she finished, she looked up at him. For the first time, a tiny smile appeared on her face. It was fragile but real. Ethan felt something in his chest like a knot loosening. "Better?" he asked. The girl nodded slowly, still holding the empty bottle. But then her eyes narrowed, not with fear, but with curiosity. She tilted her head and studied him, as if she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Why?" she asked softly. Her voice carried both confusion and suspicion. "Why what?" Ethan asked, surprised. "Why you give me this?" She said. "You human, you want something?" Her words cut through him. She was not just hungry, she was cautious. She had been treated badly before, enough to believe that kindness always came with a price. Ethan shook his head. "No, I don't want anything," he said firmly. "You looked hungry. That's all." The girl's eyes searched his face, looking for a lie. Her tiny smile faded into a thoughtful silence. She hugged the empty bottle to her chest as if it was a treasure. The alley grew colder, and a soft wind moved. The old posters on the walls. Ethan stayed crouched, unsure if he should leave or stay. Something told him this meeting was not ordinary. The girl's eyes, though tired, seemed older than her years, filled with stories untold. Finally, Ethan stood up. He didn't want to scare her. "I live nearby," he said gently. "If you need more food, you can find me. My name is Ethan." The girl didn't answer. She just watched him with her strange, glowing eyes, silent, still testing him. Her tiny smile returned for a moment, then vanished like a shadow. As Ethan walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed. He had only offered her milk, but it felt like he had stepped into something far deeper. And in the silence of the alley, the tiny alien girl whispered to herself, "Human, maybe different." Her voice was so soft that only the night heard her. The next night, Ethan found himself walking back through the same narrow alley. He had told himself it was only curiosity, maybe even worry, but deep down, he knew it was more. Something about the tiny alien girl had stayed in his mind all day. He couldn't stop thinking about her eyes, her smile, and the strange way she asked him, "Why you give me this?" When he reached the alley, he slowed his steps. The shadows were thicker tonight. The sound of dripping water echoed louder. For a moment, he thought she had gone. But then, near the same wall, he saw her again. She was sitting with her knees to her chest, eyes half closed as if waiting. Ethan cleared his throat gently. "Hey," he said, "I brought something." He lifted a small paper bag. Inside was bread, an apple, and another bottle of milk. The girl's head lifted slowly, her big glowing eyes fixed on the bag. Hunger flickered across her face, but it was quickly replaced by suspicion. She did not move. She only whispered, "Why you come back?" Ethan knelt down, leaving the bag in front of her. "Because I thought you might need this," he said calmly. The girl's fingers twitched, but she didn't touch the food. Instead, she tilted her head, studying him with sharp curiosity. "Humans always want something," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm. "You give food, but what you want in return?" Her words struck him. Ethan realized this was not just a hungry child. She was testing him, pushing him to show his true self. "I don't want anything," he replied. "You're just a kid. No kid should go hungry." The girl narrowed her eyes. "Many humans see alien child and walk away," she said slowly. "Some laugh, some throw stones." Her hand moved to her shoulder, where Ethan noticed a small bruise hidden under her torn clothes. Ethan's jaw tightened. He hated to imagine what she had gone through. "I'm not like them," he said, his voice low but steady. The girl gave a short laugh, but it was not joyful. It was bitter. "All humans say that," she whispered, "but truth shows later." She finally reached for the bag, pulling out the bread. She tore it into small pieces, eating quickly, but even while eating, her eyes stayed on him, watching, measuring, as if she could read his soul through his face. Ethan sat on the cold ground across from her. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl paused, bread halfway to her mouth. Her lips tightened. "Why?" "Because I want to know who I'm talking to," Ethan said, keeping his tone soft. She shook her head. "Name is power. If I tell, you use it." Ethan blinked, surprised. This was not something a normal child would say. It was the voice of someone who had learned hard lessons too early. "Okay," he said gently. "Then don't tell. I'll just call you little one until you're ready." For the first time, her expression softened. She chewed silently, and after a long pause, she whispered, "Leary." The name came out like a secret pushed through trembling lips. Ethan smiled faintly. "Leary, that's a beautiful name." The girl froze, staring at him. Her eyes searched again for some hidden trick, but she found none. Slowly, she lowered her gaze, almost shy. The wind shifted through the alley, carrying a faint noise from the city outside. Laughter, footsteps, the sound of a hover car passing by. But in that narrow place, only the two of them existed. After finishing the bread and milk, Leary wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Then she leaned forward, her voice sharp again. "Why you not afraid?" "Afraid of what?" Ethan asked. "Me," she whispered. Her small silver fingers pointed at herself. "Alien child, unwanted, hunted, dangerous for you." Ethan shook his head. "You're not dangerous," he said. "You're just a little girl who needs help." Leary's eyes flashed. She leaned closer, her voice rising with sudden intensity. "You don't understand. If they find me with you, you will be in danger too. Do you still help me then?" The question hung heavy in the cold air. It was not a child's question. It was a challenge. Ethan looked straight at her, his voice steady. Yes, I will. Danger doesn't change what's right. For a long moment, Leary did not move. Her eyes widened slightly as if she had not expected that answer. Then, almost against her will, her lips curved into a small smile. But just as quickly the smile faded, she looked away and whispered, "We see." Ethan didn't push. He knew trust could not be forced. He only stood and dusted off his hands. "I'll come back tomorrow if you want." Leary did not answer. She hugged her knees again, hiding her face. But as Ethan turned to leave, he heard her voice, faint and broken, carried softly by the night. "Human, strange," she whispered. Ethan walked home with a heavy heart. The milk, the bread, the smile. These things felt small. But he knew something much larger was forming, something he couldn't yet name. And in the shadows of the alley, Leary's eyes stayed open long after he left, watching, thinking, and whispering to herself. He says danger doesn't change what's right. But all humans break someday. The third night came with heavy clouds over the city. The air felt damp and the smell of rain lingered even though no drops had fallen yet. Ethan's steps echoed against the stone as he made his way toward the alley again. He had told himself this was risky, but something stronger than reason kept pulling him back. When he turned the corner, he saw her right away. Leary was awake this time, sitting against the wall. Her silver skin seemed dull under the weak streetlight. Her small arms were wrapped tightly around her legs. She was waiting, though she would never admit it. Ethan carried a small blanket under his arm along with food. He placed them on the ground and sat across from her. For a moment, they only looked at each other in silence. The night was quiet except for the distant hum of hover cars far above. "You came back," Leary whispered. Her voice carried a mix of surprise and doubt. "I said I would," Ethan replied. His voice was calm, steady. She reached for the food, but slowly this time, not like the first night. She chewed quietly, her glowing eyes watching him the way someone watches fire, part warmth, part danger. As she ate, Ethan noticed something. When she shifted her arm, the sleeve of her shirt slipped down for a second, revealing a faint mark near her shoulder. It was dark against her silver skin like a burn, or maybe something deeper. "What happened there?" Ethan asked softly, pointing gently. Leary froze. Her hand stopped midway, holding a piece of bread. Her eyes darkened. "Nothing," she said quickly, pulling her sleeve back up. Ethan didn't push, but the way she avoided his gaze told him it was not nothing. It was something painful, something she carried inside. After a long silence, she whispered, "Humans always want to know too much." "Not always," Ethan said. "But sometimes. Knowing means helping." She gave a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Help," she repeated. "That word means nothing. I had help before." It turned to pain. Ethan's chest tightened. He leaned forward. "Leary, did someone hurt you?" Her lips trembled. She tried to hide it, but her small body shook. Finally, she lifted her sleeve again, this time slowly revealing the scar. It was not just a simple mark. It was a strange symbol burned into her skin, almost like it had been pressed there with heat. The edges looked old, healed long ago, but still cruel. Ethan's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice low. Her gaze turned hard, but her hands trembled as she hugged herself. "My own," she whispered. "My people." Ethan felt a wave of anger rise inside him. "Why? You're just a child." Leary's voice cracked. "Because I failed because I was weak," they said. "I was useless." Her words broke, and for the first time Ethan saw tears form in her glowing eyes. They rolled down her cheeks, shining faintly under the streetlight. Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to reach out, but he knew she might pull away. Still, he spoke firmly. "They were wrong. You're not useless." Her eyes snapped to his, fierce but fragile. "You don't know. You don't understand," she said sharply. "Humans say kind words, but truth comes later. Truth is always cruel. Not always, Ethan said. His voice was steady, but his hands curled into fists against the cold ground. Sometimes truth is that you're stronger than you think. Sometimes truth is that you deserve better than pain. For a long moment, Leary stared at him, her face unreadable. The silence between them was thick, filled with things neither could explain. Finally, she whispered, "You say this now? But when they come for me, when danger is near, will you still speak same words?" Ethan held her gaze without blinking. "Yes," he said simply. The wind picked up, lifting dust and papers through the alley. Leary turned her face away, but he noticed the way her hands loosened on her knees, the way her breathing slowed. She pulled the blanket closer, touching it with careful fingers. It was soft, warmer than anything she had felt in weeks. "Why?" she asked again, her voice barely a breath. "Why you care?" Ethan thought for a moment, then answered, "Because no one cared for me once, and I know what it feels like." His words were simple, but heavy. They were not just for her. They were for his own past, too. Leary's eyes softened, confusion mixing with something else, something close to trust, but still she shook her head. "I test you," she whispered. "I will keep testing until I know." "Then test me," Ethan replied. "I'm not going anywhere." Her small lips curved into the faintest smile, almost invisible. She lay down, pulling the blanket around herself, and closed her eyes. For the first time, she looked less like a frightened creature and more like a child. Ethan stayed for a while, watching her breathe, watching the scar disappear under the blanket. His heart was heavy, but also strangely calm. He knew this was only the beginning. He had stepped into something dangerous, something fragile. But as he walked home under the dark clouds, he whispered to himself, "Whatever scar they gave her, I'll show her she's more than it." And in the alley, as sleep touched her eyes, Leary whispered into the night, "Strange human, maybe true." The fourth night was colder than before. A thin mist rolled between the narrow alleys, and the streetlights flickered weakly as if the city itself was holding its breath. Ethan walked carefully, a bag in his hand. His thoughts were heavy, replaying Leary's words from the night before. "I test you, I will keep testing. Until I know." When he reached the alley, Leary was already awake, sitting on the blanket he had left her. Her eyes glowed faintly in the mist, but her face was unreadable. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just watched him approach like a judge waiting for a verdict. "You came again," she whispered. "I said I would," Ethan replied, setting the bag down. She tilted her head. "Humans break promises," she said. "Most don't return." Ethan gave a small smile. "I'm not most." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Leary asked something unexpected. "If I tell you a lie, will you know?" Ethan blinked. "A lie?" "Yes," she said seriously. "I want to see. If you trust too much, you are fool. If you trust too little, you are cruel." Ethan frowned. "And what happens if I trust just right?" Her lips curved slightly. "Then maybe you are different." She looked down at the ground, then whispered, "Today I found food. A kind woman gave me bread. I am not hungry." Her voice was soft, steady, almost believable. Ethan studied her carefully. He saw the way her small hands gripped the edge of the blanket, the way her eyes avoided his. His heart twisted, not because of the lie itself, but because of why she felt the need to test him. "Is that so?" he asked calmly. "Then I guess you don't need this." He pushed the bag of food closer to her feet and leaned back against the wall. His voice was even, but his eyes stayed gentle. Leary blinked, her lips parting in surprise. She had expected him to push, to question, maybe even to get angry. Instead, he simply accepted her words. After a long pause, she opened the bag slowly. Her small fingers touched the apple inside. She stared at it for a moment before whispering, "I lied." Ethan nodded. "I know." Her head snapped up. "You knew? Then why?" Because trust isn't about catching lies, Ethan said softly. It's about letting someone show their truth when they're ready. The mist swirled between them, and for the first time, Leary's sharp gaze softened. Her small voice cracked as she whispered, "Why are you like this?" "Like what?" Ethan asked. "Kind," she whispered, as if the word itself was fragile. "Kind without reason." "It makes no sense." Ethan thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe it doesn't need sense. Maybe kindness is its own reason." Leary lowered her gaze. Her tiny fingers tightened around the apple, and then slowly she took a bite. The crunch echoed in the silent alley. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. After a while, she spoke again, her voice low. "When I lived with my people, I trusted someone once. He said he would protect me. He sold me instead." Her words were sharp, but trembling. "Since then, I test. I always test. If I don't, I break." Ethan's chest ached. He wanted to reach across the cold ground and take her small hand, but he didn't. He knew she was not ready. Instead, he said, "You don't have to test me forever, Leary. I'm not here to use you or sell you, I'm just here." Her eyes flicked up to his, glowing faintly in the mist. For the first time, there was no suspicion in them, only confusion, deep and raw. "Maybe," she whispered, "maybe you pass one test." A faint smile touched Ethan's lips. He leaned his head back against the wall, looking at the broken sky above. "One step at a time," he said. For the rest of the night, they sat in silence. Leary ate slowly. Ethan watched the mist curl through the alley. Neither spoke much, but something had shifted. It was small, invisible to anyone else, but real. When Ethan finally stood to leave, Leary spoke softly. "If I disappear one night, will you still come back?" He turned to her, his face serious. "Yes." Her eyes widened slightly. Her lips trembled. Then she whispered, "Strange human," and curled into the blanket. Hugging the apple core like it was gold, Ethan walked home through the mist, his heart heavy but steady. He had passed one test, but he knew more were coming. Each night with Leary felt like walking a bridge made of glass, fragile, dangerous, but leading somewhere he could not turn away from. And in the alley, as the night grew colder, Leary whispered into the blanket, "Maybe, just maybe, not all break." The fifth night felt different. Ethan sensed it before he even reached the alley. The city seemed quieter than usual, as if holding its breath. The streetlights buzzed weakly, casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. Ethan's steps slowed. As he approached, his instincts whispering that something was wrong. Leary was there, curled up in her blanket, but this time her body was stiff. Her eyes were wide open, glowing faintly. She looked not like a child waiting, but like prey listening. "For hunters, what's wrong?" Ethan asked softly, crouching near her. She shook her head quickly. "Shh," she whispered, pressing a finger to her lips. "They are near." Ethan froze, his heart thudding. "Who?" Her voice was trembling but clear. "The ones who marked me, the ones who want me back." Even as she spoke, faint footsteps echoed at the mouth of the alley. Slow, heavy, measured. Ethan turned his head, and in the distance, through the mist, he saw them. 3 tall figures moving together. Their faces were hidden by dark masks, their shoulders broad, and in their hands glowed faint weapons of alien design. Leary pressed herself tighter against the wall, her small body shaking. "They found me," she whispered. Ethan's throat went dry. He was only a factory worker, no soldier, no fighter. Yet seeing her terrified eyes ignited something inside him. He couldn't run, not while she was cornered like this. The figures entered the alley. Their boots made soft thuds against the stone. One of them spoke, a deep metallic voice that echoed, unnaturally. "Return the child, human, she is not yours." Ethan rose slowly, placing himself between Leary and the strangers. "She doesn't belong to you either," he said firmly. Though his voice shook slightly, the tallest figure tilted his head. "You do not understand. This child carries what is ours. She is property, marked for retrieval. The word property cut into the night like a blade. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. She's not property, he said. She's a child. Behind him, Leary's small voice whispered urgently, "Don't fight them, please. They will hurt you." The leader stepped forward, his mask reflecting the dim light. "Human, step aside. You have no part in this. You will be allowed to live if you obey." Ethan's heart pounded. He had never faced anything like this before. He could feel fear clawing at his chest. Yet when he glanced back at Leary, trembling, scarred, clutching the blanket like it was her only shield, his fear turned into something else. He spread his arms slightly, standing taller. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." For a moment, silence gripped the alley. The three masked figures did not move, only watched him. The mist swirled between them like restless ghosts. Then one of them raised a device, a glowing rod that hummed with sharp energy. Ethan's breath caught. He had no weapon, no plan, only his body standing between them and Leary. Leary gasped. "Stop! Please stop!" she cried. Her voice was desperate. She pulled at Ethan's arm. "Let them take me. It's better than you dying." But Ethan shook his head, his eyes never leaving the strangers. "No, Leary," he said, his voice steady now. "I told you, danger doesn't change what's right." Her glowing eyes widened, her lips trembled. She had tested him with words, with lies. But now the test was real, and his answer was the same. The masked figures paused, almost surprised by his defiance. The leader lowered the rod slightly, tilting his head as if studying Ethan. "Strange," the metallic voice murmured. "Few humans stand for what is not theirs." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's not mine, but she's not yours either." A tense silence followed. Then the figures slowly stepped back. Their shadows melted into the mist. But the leader's voice echoed as they retreated. "This is not finished, human. We will return." Their footsteps faded until only silence remained. Ethan exhaled sharply, his chest burning with the weight of fear and relief. He turned to Leary, who was staring at him with wide, trembling eyes. "You're safe," he whispered, though his voice was hoarse. Leary shook her head. "No," she whispered, tears rolling down her silver cheeks. "Not safe. Never safe. Because of me. You are marked now, too." Her small hands grabbed his arm tightly, as if afraid he might vanish. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You could have left me. You could have lived." Ethan knelt down, looking into her glowing eyes. His voice was firm. "Because you're not alone anymore, Leary. Whatever comes, we face it together." For a moment her lips parted, searching for words. Then slowly, a fragile smile touched her face. It was small, trembling, but it carried more weight than any words. She pressed her forehead against his arm, whispering so softly that only he could hear. "You pass another test." The alley was quiet again, but the shadows of the masked figures lingered in Ethan's mind. He knew they would be back, stronger, more dangerous. But as he looked at the tiny alien girl clinging to him, he also knew one thing for certain. He would never step aside. And in the heart of the misty night, a bond was forged, fragile but unbreakable, between a human who refused to walk away and an alien child who had almost stopped believing. The night after the masked strangers appeared, the city no longer felt the same. The air seemed heavier, the alleys darker. Ethan couldn't stop hearing the echo of that metallic voice. "We will return." He knew it was not an empty threat. They would come again, and next time they wouldn't just walk away. Ethan found himself pacing in his small apartment, his mind restless. His eyes often darted to the door. He thought about Leary alone in the alley, curled up with only a thin blanket. What if they came back tonight? What if he arrived too late? The thought made his chest tighten. Finally, he grabbed his jacket and left. His boots hit the wet pavement hard as he hurried through the streets. When he reached the alley, his heart nearly stopped. Leary wasn't there. "Leary," he hissed softly, his voice trembling. He scanned the shadows, panic building. But then a small voice came from the darkness. "Ethan!" She stepped out from behind a broken crate, her silver skin faintly glowing in the dim light. Her eyes were tired, frightened, but when she saw his face, something like relief flickered through them. "You came," she whispered, hugging the blanket tighter around her small body. "Of course I did," Ethan said firmly. "We can't stay here anymore, it's not safe." Her head tilted, her glowing eyes uncertain. "Where will we go?" "My place," Ethan said. "At least there's a roof and walls, it's better than this." Leary's lips trembled. She looked down at her feet. "If they follow me, you will be in danger too." Ethan crouched down, meeting her eyes. "I told you already I don't care about danger," he said, his voice steady. "You're not safe here. Come with me." For a moment she hesitated. Then slowly, she slipped her small hand into his. Her fingers were cold, trembling, but she held on. Together, they moved quickly through the city streets. The mist hung low, wrapping around them like a ghostly curtain. Every sound made Leary flinch. The hum of a hover car, the footsteps of strangers, the bark of a dog. Ethan kept her close, his eyes sharp, scanning every corner. When they reached his apartment building, Ethan led her up the narrow stairs. His home was small, just 2 rooms and a kitchen, but when Leary stepped inside, she froze. Her wide eyes darted around, taking in the warm light, the shelves of books, the small couch, the smell of food lingering in the air. "It's not much," Ethan said, setting down his bag, "but it's safe." Leary walked slowly across the room, her bare feet silent against the wooden floor. She touched the edge of the table with her fingertips as if testing if it was real. Her voice was quiet, almost childlike. "I never stayed in human home before." Ethan gave a small smile. "Well, now you have." He pulled out a chair. "Sit, I'll get you something to eat." She obeyed, sitting stiffly, her glowing eyes still scanning the room like she expected danger even here. Ethan heated soup on the stove and placed the bowl in front of her. Leary leaned forward, inhaling the smell. Her shoulders slowly relaxed. She ate carefully at first, then faster until the bowl was empty. When she finished, she leaned back in the chair, her small body seeming lighter. Her eyes turned to Ethan. "Why you do this?" she asked. "Why risk your life, your home, for me?" Ethan looked at her, his voice calm but firm. "Because you deserve safety. Because no one deserves to be hunted, especially not a child." Her lips trembled. She lowered her gaze, whispering, "No one ever said that to me." A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the faint sound of rain beginning to fall outside. Later, Ethan showed her the small bed in the corner of his room. "You can sleep here," he said. "It's not big, but it's warm." Leary stood by the bed, her small hands gripping the blanket he had given her. She looked at him with uncertain eyes. "If they come, what will you do?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "I'll protect you." Her eyes widened, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Even if it means you get hurt?" "Yes," Ethan said firmly. Even then, for a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she climbed onto the bed, curling up under the blanket. Her voice was soft, breaking through the silence. "You are a strange human, Ethan." He chuckled softly, sitting on the chair nearby. "I've heard that before." As the rain tapped gently against the window, Leary's breathing grew slow and steady. She had finally fallen asleep. Ethan watched her for a long time, her small frame curled up, her scar hidden under the blanket. He knew danger was still out there waiting, but for the first time she looked peaceful, and he silently promised himself he would keep her safe, no matter what. In her sleep, Leary whispered something so faint it almost faded into the sound of rain. "Maybe safe now." And in that fragile whisper, Ethan found his strength. The rain had stopped by morning, but the air was still heavy with silence. Ethan barely slept through the night. His mind stayed awake, listening for every sound outside the apartment. Every creak of the stairs, every car passing in the street made his heart jump. Leary was still asleep on the small bed, curled up in the blanket, Her breathing was soft, her face calm for once. She looked less like a hunted alien, and more like a child who finally felt safe. Ethan sat by the window, watching the streets, waiting for danger he knew would come. It didn't take long. By evening, the building grew too quiet. The usual noise of neighbors' footsteps in the hall, voices in the stairwell. It all faded. Ethan's instincts screamed. He stood and moved closer to the door. His hand hovered over the handle. Then, suddenly, a heavy knock rattled the wood. Open. A deep metallic voice commanded. Ethan's chest tightened. He knew that voice. The masked ones had returned. Leary shot up from the bed, her glowing eyes wide with fear. "They found me," she whispered, trembling. "You must give me to them. Ethan, if you don't, they will kill you." The knock came again, harder this time. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. Ethan turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not giving you to them." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand. They don't. Stop, they don't forgive if you keep me. You will die." Ethan crouched in front of her, gripping her shoulders gently. "Leary, listen to me," he said, his voice steady even as his heart raced. "I didn't bring you here just to throw you away when it got hard, I told you. I'll protect you, and I meant it." Her lips trembled. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk everything? I am not human, I am not your family." Ethan's eyes softened. "Because you're not property, you're not a mark, you're a person, and someone has to stand for you if no one else will. Then I will." Tears spilled down her silver cheeks. She shook her head, whispering, You pass all tests." The knock turned into pounding. The doorframe cracked under the force. Then, with a violent crash, the door gave way. 3 masked figures stepped inside, their glowing weapons humming with lethal energy. The leader raised his hand, pointing at Ethan. "Step aside, human, final warning." Ethan stood tall, his body shielding Leary. His hands trembled, but his voice did not. "No." The leader tilted, his head. "You choose death." Before Ethan could react, Leary stepped forward, her small body trembling but her voice sharp. "No," she cried. "He is not like you. He gave without asking. He cared without chains. He is more human than all of you are people." The masked figures froze for a moment. Their heads turned toward her. The leader lowered his weapon slightly. "The child speaks," he said, his metallic voice cold. "But words do not change fate." Ethan moved forward, his fists clenched, ready to throw himself into a hopeless fight. But then, something unexpected happened. Leary's skin began to glow brighter. A faint silver light spread from her scar, covering her arms, her face. It was as if her body itself had awakened. The leader hissed, stepping back. "Impossible." "The mark." It activated. Leary's voice was clear now, steady. "This mark you gave me was meant to bind, but it does not bind me. It frees me, because he showed me I am not alone." The light grew stronger, filling the room with a strange warmth. The masked figures staggered, shielding their eyes. One of them dropped his weapon with a sharp hiss as if burned. Ethan stared in shock. "Leary, what's happening?" She turned to him, her glowing eyes filled with something new. Strength. "Your humanity woke me," she whispered. "I am not weak anymore." The masked figures retreated, stumbling toward the broken door. The leader growled, his metallic voice trembling. "This is not over, human. You and the child will pay." Then they vanished, into the mist outside, leaving only silence behind. The light around Leary slowly faded. She fell to her knees, exhausted. Ethan rushed forward, catching her before she hit the floor. "Easy, I've got you," he whispered, holding her small body in his arms. Her voice was faint but steady. "You passed the final test, Ethan." He frowned. "Final test?" Her lips curved into the tiniest smile, to see if a human would stand, even when it cost him everything. Her glowing eyes softened as she looked at him. "Now I know. Not all humans break." Ethan held her close, his chest heavy but full. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring or if the masked ones would return. But in that moment he knew this. He had not only offered her milk, He had offered her something far greater, and she had given him something back. Purpose. Outside, the mist thickened again, carrying echoes of danger yet to come. But inside the small room, for the first time, hope burned brighter than fear. And as Leary drifted into sleep, safe in his arms, Ethan whispered into the night, "You're not alone anymore, and you never will be."